Have you ever wondered how far back your family tree goes? Or where your ancestors truly came from? For most of us, it's a mystery we'll never fully solve. But for one community in Africa, modern science has pulled back the curtain on their ancient past. I'm talking about the Ethiopian Jews, also known as the BetaIsrael. Their story is one of the most fascinating, mysterious, and, at times, heartbreaking tales in world history. For centuries, they were hidden away in the highlands of Ethiopia, living their lives, following traditions that looked strikingly similar to those of ancient Israel. But here's the big question. Who are they really? Were they descendants of one of the lost tribes of Israel? Were they local Ethiopians who converted to Judaism long ago? Or is there another story, one that ties Africa, Israel, and the ancient world together in a way that still shocks historians today? Well, thanks to DNA research, new evidence has begun to unravel the mystery. And what scientists discovered about the BetaIsrael will leave you amazed. So, sit back, relax, and join me as we uncover the truth about Ethiopian Jews and how their DNA reveals shocking origins that connect them to one of the greatest stories ever told. Now let's delve right in. First, let's begin with the question, who are the BetaIsrael? The BetaIsrael, meaning House of Israel, are an ancient community of Jews who lived in the northern highlands of Ethiopia, particularly around Lake Tana and the province of Gondar. For centuries, they lived almost completely isolated from the wider Jewish world. They kept to themselves, farming the land, herding cattle, and practicing a form of Judaism that, to outsiders, looked frozen in time. They observed the Sabbath. They followed dietary laws similar to kosher. They celebrated biblical feasts like Passover. They even practiced ancient sacrifices in ways that resembled what Israelites might have done in the Old Testament era, something Jews elsewhere had long abandoned after the destruction of the temple. To European Jews and Christian missionaries who encountered them in the 19th century, the BetaIsrael seemed like a people straight out of the pages of the Bible. But this raised a burning question. How did they end up in Ethiopia in the first place? There are many theories about the origins of Ethiopian Jews. Theory 1. The tribe of Dan. One of the oldest traditions among the BetaIsrael themselves is that they are descendants of the tribe of Dan, one of the so-called lost tribes of Israel. After the Assyrian conquest in the 8th century BC, 10 of Israel's tribes were scattered across the world, never to be heard from again. Some say the tribe of Dan wandered south, eventually settling in Ethiopia. Theory 2. The Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. Another popular story connects them to the famous meeting between King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Ethiopian tradition claims that the Queen of Sheba returned home from Jerusalem carrying Solomon's child, Menelik I. According to Ethiopian legend, Menelik later brought the Ark of the Covenant back to Ethiopia. Some believe that Jewish priests and followers who came with him established the BetaIsrael community. Theory 3. Local conversions. Historians who are more skeptical suggest that perhaps local Ethiopians converted to Judaism at some point in history, maybe through contact with Jewish traders, travelers, or migrants coming from Arabia. Each of these theories has strengths and weaknesses, but for centuries, no one could be sure. The mystery remained, until modern science, through DNA testing, finally stepped in. In the late 20th and early 21st century, scientists began studying the DNA of Jewish communities around the world. They wanted to see if there were common genetic markers that tied all Jews together. What they found was remarkable. Despite being scattered across continents for over 2,000 years, Jewish populations, from Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond, shared certain genetic signatures that pointed back to the ancient Israelites. Naturally, researchers turned their attention to the BetaIsrael. If the Ethiopian Jews were truly descendants of the tribe of Dan or other ancient Israelites, their DNA would show it. If they were local converts, their DNA would look mostly Ethiopian. So what did the results say? When scientists finally looked into the DNA of the BetaIsrael, the discoveries both confirmed old suspicions and opened new mysteries. At first glance, the results seemed straightforward. Genetically, the BetaIsrael were much closer to other Ethiopians than to Jewish populations in Europe or the Middle East. This finding gave weight to the idea that they were originally Ethiopians who, at some point in history, adopted Judaism and wove it into their cultural identity. But the story didn't end there. Hidden within their DNA were subtle, yet undeniable, traces of Middle Eastern ancestry. These markers created a genetic bridge linking them, however faintly, to ancient Jewish communities from the land of Israel and its neighboring regions. It was like finding a distant echo in their blood, a whisper from a homeland thousands of miles away. In simple terms, the Beta Israel are a blend, predominantly Ethiopian, yet carrying within them strands of ancient Jewish heritage. This paints a picture far richer than legend alone, of migration, intermarriage, and faith that endured. They may not be direct, unbroken descendants of the tribe of Dan, but their bond to Israel remains authentic. The truth is not simple, but it is deeply meaningful. Now, you might be wondering, why does all of this matter? Well, for the Beta Israel themselves, these results are deeply meaningful. For centuries, they faced questions, even rejection, from both Jews and non-Jews alike. Some outsiders doubted they were really Jewish at all. Others dismissed their traditions as imitations. In Ethiopia, they suffered discrimination, being treated as outcasts. They were often called falasha, meaning stranger or exile. But DNA evidence, combined with their unbroken practice of ancient Jewish customs, gave them recognition. In 1975, Israel officially recognized the Beta Israel as part of the Jewish people under the Law of Return. This recognition set the stage for one of the most daring rescue missions in modern history. During one of the darkest periods in Ethiopia's modern history, the fate of the Beta Israel hung in the balance. The 1980s and 1990s were years of deep suffering in Ethiopia. Civil war raged, famine devastated the countryside, and political unrest tore communities apart. For the Beta Israel, who were already marginalized and discriminated against, survival became almost impossible. Yet, even in those dark days, they held on to a dream they had whispered for centuries, the dream of Jerusalem. Sensing the urgency, Israel, along with international partners, took unprecedented steps. In Operation Moses, 1984 to 85, thousands of Beta Israel secretly walked across dangerous deserts into Sudan, where Israeli planes waited. The journey was brutal. Many died from hunger and disease, but more than 8,000 were flown to safety, finally setting foot in the land they had prayed for. Just a few years later came Operation Solomon, 1991, even more daring and miraculous. In a span of just 36 hours, over 14,000 Ethiopian Jews were airlifted in Israeli planes, some so crowded that seats were removed to fit more passengers. Babies were born mid-flight, elders wept, and families sang prayers of thanksgiving. To the Beta Israel, this was not just rescue, it was redemption. It was their own modern-day exodus, a living fulfillment of their ancestors' hope to return to Zion after centuries in exile. But the story doesn't end with the airlifts. For Ethiopian Jews, arriving in Israel was only the beginning of a new struggle. They faced challenges integrating into a modern, industrial society very different from their farming villages in Ethiopia. They encountered racism, economic hardship, and cultural differences. Yet, over the decades, Ethiopian Jews have made incredible contributions to Israeli society. They serve in the military. They are artists, politicians, scholars, and community leaders. Their music, food, and traditions have enriched the cultural fabric of modern Israel. And through it all, they carry with them the pride of their unique identity, a reminder that Judaism is not tied to one color, one culture, or one land. It is a people bound together across history, across continents, and even across DNA. The DNA studies on the Beta Israel reveal something that speaks to all of us. Identity is rarely straightforward. We often like to imagine neat, unbroken bloodlines or cultures that remain untouched for thousands of years. But the truth is very different. Human history is a tapestry, threads woven from migrations, marriages across tribes, adoptions, and conversions. Every people carries within them a story of blending and adaptation. The Beta Israel are a shining example of this. Genetically, they are deeply Ethiopian, tied to the soil and heritage of Africa. Yet within their blood lingers a trace of ancient Israel, a reminder of journeys long past and connections across continents. This dual identity does not make them less Jewish. It makes their story richer. What truly defines them is not a genetic marker, but the unshakable faith they carried for centuries in isolation, the traditions they guarded as though time itself could not erode them, and the resilience that brought them through persecution and exile. Their DNA may tell of mixing, but their hearts and practices testify to something stronger than blood, a chosen identity rooted in belief, hope, and endurance. And in that, the Beta Israel show us what identity truly means. For many, the story of the Beta Israel isn't just about science, it's about faith. Think about it. A small community, cut off from the rest of the Jewish world for over 1,000 years, still managed to preserve traditions that looked strikingly biblical. They lived as though the temple still stood. They read the Torah in their own language, Guizi. They waited and prayed for the day they would return to Zion. And against all odds, that prayer was answered. In the Bible, God promised to gather his people from the four corners of the earth. Many see the return of Ethiopian Jews to Israel as a fulfillment of that prophecy. In conclusion, the truth about Ethiopian Jews is more than just a story about DNA. It is a story of faith, resilience, and survival. Yes, their DNA shows they are mostly Ethiopian with traces of ancient Jewish ancestry. But their real identity lies in how they held on to their faith for centuries, living in isolation, enduring persecution, and never losing hope. Today, when we look at the Beta Israel, we see a living reminder that history is never simple, and that sometimes the most powerful stories are not written in books, but in the very blood of a people. So the next time someone asks, "Who are the Ethiopian Jews?" you can answer, "They are a people of faith, a people of resilience, and a people whose DNA bridges Africa and Israel, ancient times and the modern world." And maybe, just maybe, their journey reminds us that no matter how scattered or lost we may feel, we are all connected in ways more powerful than we can imagine. So, what do you think truly defines identity? Our DNA, or the traditions and faith we choose to carry forward? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. If this story moved you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history, culture, and the untold stories of our world. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.